Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. And today I want to talk about a comic book graphic novel that I read. I am back on that graphic novel grind. Actually have been for a while, but nothing I read has really stood out to me apart from the Berserk series, and that's more manga, so I haven't really talked about it. But today's graphic novel is all about costumes, superheroes, and secret assassins. I am referring to Captain America, Winter Soldier, The Ultimate Collection by Ed Brubaker, which was published in 2010, although the story was originally written in 2005. For those who don't know, Ed Brubaker is an American comic book writer, primarily. He's written for Vertigo as well as DC and Marvel, and he's won awards for his work as well. He's been writing since the 1990s, which is pretty cool. And he's, in addition to writing, the Captain America Winter Soldier storyline, which was later adapted into a movie, he was also partially responsible for the death of Captain America storyline, which again also won awards and is very well acclaimed, critically acclaimed. Although I haven't read it, I do intend to read it pretty soon, based on what I've seen here. I've never really read any comics from Brubaker. I don't think so. But I was familiar with this story, so the big old plot twist wasn't as big for me as it might have been to some people at the time. But it still felt pretty significant. And although there's like a plot twist here, I am going to spoil this when I talk about it in the summary section, because this is a 18-year-old comic at this point, and also was adapted into a movie. So there's a good chance that many people already know what happens here. Without further ado, let's talk about the Winter Soldier. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So the Winter Soldier focuses on Captain America, of course, but at the start we see Red Skull seeking the cosmic cube, initially talking to a man named a Russian sort of traitor named Lukin, who is trying to work out with him. He also wants access to the cosmic cube, but Red Skull isn't willing to part with it when he does find it. And we also see in the present day, Steve Rogers is very sad, kind of distancing himself from others. Recently, the Avengers broke up, and Hawkeye also died. So Steve is dealing with the loss of a friend, and he at this point in this continuity, it's been 10 years since he's been thawed out. So he's still dealing with the fact that a lot of his World War II life is gone and whatnot. And then also in the present, we see that Lukin wants Red Skull to give him the cosmic cube, because Red Skull now has it, but Red Skull refuses, and he is killed by a mysterious assassin. And his men, in order to carry on his legacy, place bombs all around the globe, which Steve and Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Sharon Carter have to uncover, and for the most part they're able to succeed there. Along the way, we see flashes of Steve's memories of World War II, including his time working alongside Bucky Barnes, who was unfortunately killed when they tracked down Baron Zemo. That was around the time that Steve got frozen. So Steve is kind of dealing with the grief from that. Around this time also, Sharon Carter gets kidnapped, and when Steve manages to find her, along with Sharon's boyfriend, Sharon lets him know that she thinks that Bucky might be involved somehow, even though he seemingly died long ago. And there is a huge explosion in Philadelphia that kills Sharon's boyfriend at this time. We also see that an assassin kills Jack Monroe, who was once identified as Bucky, but it seems like he was only playing the part after Bucky and Steve mysteriously vanished. And at this time, we also learn that Bucky is the Winter Soldier. We see a file on Bucky where after Bucky sort of presumably died in an explosion, he actually landed in some frozen water, and the Russians managed to find him and turn him into a soldier in an effort to create a Cold War operative who could get into and out of the West without a problem because he was American. But in this file, they also learned that Bucky believes, or Bucky still has access to some of his old memories, even though he was programmed and whatnot to side with the Russians. And so Steve now believes that there is an aspect of the old Bucky in him, and he doesn't want to necessarily get him killed. He's hoping to save him. Steve and Sharon and everyone launch an assault on Lucan's facility in order to find Bucky, but they only find a UN agent who is unhappy that they are violating sovereign country rules and whatnot, and so they have to leave and let Lucan go on with whatever he's planning. At the same time, Crossbones, who is angry at Captain America, finds Red Skull's daughter, but we never see what develops from that. After Captain America reads the Winter Soldier's file again, he seeks help from Falcon as well as Iron Man, but Iron Man can't help because of weird business deals and whatnot. Like Cap and Falcon and a bunch of other people managed to break into the facility where Bucky is operating things, and Captain America and Bucky have a fight where Steve tries to convince Bucky to remember his old self, but the Winter Soldier refuses. And at that point, Steve sort of knocks the cosmic cube out of Bucky's hands with the shield that he's using, and this results in Steve being able to pick up the shield, and he uses it on Bucky to get him to recall the memories. And from there, Bucky sort of remembers everything, what happened in World War II, as well as his friendship with Steve, and the programming that he went through and the people that he killed in the process. Bucky finds this overwhelming to deal with, so he uses the cosmic cube to teleport somewhere else. And as the story comes to a close, we see Lucan talking to someone in his apartment, noting that he failed here, but he will succeed elsewhere. And it's revealed that the person he's talking to is Red Skull, who through some mysterious accident with the cosmic cube is now sharing his brain or something like that. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a lot of good, but also a lot of bad to talk about with the Winter Soldier story. One thing that Ed Brubaker touches upon is that of loss. Captain America is dealing with multiple losses at the start of this story. He's been unfrozen in the future. That's sort of the running continuity, and he's dealing with the fact that everyone he loves is gone, and it's hard to adjust to this world. Like he fought and sacrificed so much during World War II, and now 40 years later, it seems like it's gone nowhere. It's all for nothing. So that's got to be hard for him to deal with. And then you also have him dealing with Bucky's death and the risks he's taking there, which is extremely hard. He hasn't had time to really properly grieve. And the Avengers are now gone. And a person he called a friend, Hawkeye, is dead. So it's one loss, one failure after another for Captain America. Sure, he's able to stop some bad people like the Red Skull and whatnot, but for the most part, he's really struggling and not really able to share with other people because everything is kind of placed on his shoulders. There is an interesting quote that I would like to read to you from this. "You know what I see when I dream, Sharon? I see the war, my war. After all this time, I still dream about foxholes and the Black Forest, still hear the screams of terrified soldiers, smell their blood and tears. I still dream about Bucky, him, and all the others I couldn't save. It hardly seems fair, after so much time has passed in the world, that in my dreams, it's still 1944, which is an interesting quote from Captain America here, from Steve here, because even though the world has moved on, he's still kind of dealing with the trauma and the grief from being made into a super soldier and fighting for America during World War II. He's had no time to grieve, which is unfortunate for him. And this continues even more. He's forced to fight once Bucky resurfaces. He's not even allowed to question it or try to stop Bucky. He has to work forward, or people will die. And so for Captain America, it's very sad. It's a struggle for him. And I like how Ed Brubaker gets at that here. What's also interesting from this is Bucky's suffering. Bucky is forced to kill for the Russians, forced to kill for whoever basically programs him, it seems. And it is program service. He's essentially a mind slave of some sort. Basically, whoever unthaws him and tells him to go and kill, he has no choice but to go and do that. Bucky's life kind of ended in World War II. You might even argue it ended sometime during World War II, because he no longer had his own autonomy once he was working alongside Steve. But fortunately, part of Bucky remains, and he's able to sort of fight the programming in some sort of way, with the Russians noting that no matter how much they try to control his mind, like he still challenges orders and goes off and has some aspects of his memories there. And it's even more interesting is at the end of the story when Steve uses the cosmic cube, he has Bucky remember everything, which is good because now he's able to understand what has happened to him. But at the same time, that's sort of terrifying because a lot has happened to Bucky in his life. For him to forget everything and then suddenly remember World War II, what he was expected to do, and working alongside Captain America, the friendship there, and all the assassinations and programming he received, and the sort of torture he went through, like that can't be easy. That the flood of memories there has to be even more difficult to deal with than what's been going on for the past 50 years for him. So it's kind of a horrifying ordeal for him, and I think Steve recognizes that, and I think Ed Brubaker even knows that, because that's why he has Bucky flee. Essentially, he needs time to heal there. But even though this is also pretty well done, like there are a couple of problems here. Like it feels like there's not enough of a focus on Bucky, even though this is a story that's partially about him. It really seems like it's more focused on Captain America than anything. And I feel like the story partially suffers because this could be about Bucky's like fight against the programming and what he remembers and his side of things. And I feel like the story doesn't really want to be about that, unfortunately. And then I think it also doesn't want to be about him because of a central conflict that Brubaker only barely touches upon, and that's how the United States used Bucky in the same way that the Russians used him. At one point in the story, a general or something is talking to Captain America during World War II, and he notes how good it would be for a teenager to travel alongside Captain America and what it would do for the war effort and morale and everything like that. And the general also notes like, it wouldn't also be a problem if he did some things that Captain America couldn't be seen doing, like killing targets and basically serving as a hitman or an assassin during this war effort. And so the United States used Bucky in the same way that the Russians did. It's just it's seen as a good thing because he was working on the morally virtuous side of World War II. But you might argue that in war, nobody is truly morally virtuous. So I feel like Brubaker touches upon that a little bit, but he doesn't have the audacity to actually confront that. And again, like if you do confront that, then you have to confront and Captain America is also that, and that kind of ruins the entire Captain America comic if you're not trying to honestly portray what's going on here. But I feel like not acknowledging that with Bucky kind of hurts the comic in a little bit of way. Something interesting that I like about this comic is that it does have a globe-trotting feel to it. The Captain America Winter Soldier movie also had got this feel where it felt like a spy thriller, and characters were traveling around trying to find the Winter Soldier and whatnot. And I do feel like that's present here as well. And I feel like that's what makes a Captain America comic interesting, is that feel of traveling around and trying to uncover things. Because Captain America is smart in addition to being a powerhouse. So playing on those kinds of themes and those kinds of skills that he has is important for making a solid comic, I feel. Of course, there are a couple of bad things about this comic. Steve Rogers feels like a jerk here. The way that he treats Sharon and the way that he talks to others, it doesn't feel like the wholesome Captain America that I've come to expect from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It feels like he's very mean to people sometimes, and the things that he says isn't really befitting of a superhero. It just seems like he's kind of edgy at times for the sake of edginess. And then also, it does feel like the Cosmic Cube is kind of vague. I don't really know what it does in the story. Maybe I have to read a previous installment to really figure that out. But it feels like vague what the Cosmic Cube can do, because it can teleport people apparently, but it can also make them relive memories, and it also apparently forced the Red Skull inside the mind of another person. It's a bit unclear, and it just seems like the Cosmic Cube does whatever the plot demands of it, which is not a really good way to write magical objects in my opinion. And then also, I feel like Lucan's entire plan is stupid. I'm not really sure what he's hoping to accomplish here, because he forces a bunch of businesses to sell shares to him to give him control of the companies. But to what end? It doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't really make sense why he's using the Cosmic Cube for any of this. Why is he even employing Bucky in the first place? And given that he comes to realize that the Cosmic Cube is too dangerous for him to use, and that he'd rather have it buried so nobody else can use it against him, why seek it out in the first place? Why, couldn't you have just killed Red Skull and then buried it and then just dealt with whatever plan that you have? And apparently somebody is sending Captain America the file on Bucky, because it wasn't S.H.I.E.L.D. And I think it was Lucan. The plot, it's heavily implied that Lucan sent it to him. But why? Why would he give Captain America access or knowledge of the weapon, knowledge of how to deprogram Bucky? Again, that doesn't really make sense, and it hinders Lucan's entire plan. It makes him feel like a bad antagonistic force in this story. It feels like the story's missing a true threat, because it's certainly not Bucky, and it's not it doesn't feel like Lucan, so the story feels like it's missing that. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Captain America, the Winter Soldier, the collection by Ed Brubaker. I thought it was interesting, but I feel like its problems kind of weigh it down and prevent it from truly excelling. There's an interesting story buried somewhere in here, but it's probably one of the weaker comic stories that I've read. Although this is the first Captain America story that I read, so I'm hoping there are better versions, better stories out there. I am interested in reading the Civil War series, as well as the death of Captain America, although that's a very weird place to start with my reading, but it is an acclaimed story, and I'd love to see what the writers choose to do with Captain America there. So I don't recommend that you go out and buy this, but maybe check it out from your local library like I did. That it could be a fun little loan out that you do there. If you read this before, you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. Let's have a discussion about the Winter Soldier. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this story or this author if they don't already know. Also, join the Discord and let's have a conversation about books or movies or whatnot if you want to do that. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and mind-programmed travels. Farewell.